Good evening, everyone. Good day to those in Australia. Good night to those in other parts of the world. And good afternoon to those in America. Now, I wanted to talk about armour and tank protection in how it relates to models and how it relates to the theory of war and how it relates to media myths and misconceptions. Even museums get this badly wrong. So hopefully I'll dispel some of the myths. Now, I should say I'm not a tanker. I'm not military. There are people on the channel who are military, and my hat's off to them. Thank you for their service. They've been there, got the t-shirt, worn the kit, seen the injuries, and they understand this stuff much better than I can ever convey. So I'm going to keep it hopefully simple, but try and relate it in concepts that everyone can relate to and how it relates to model tanks. Now, the first thing I'll say is I'm going to pose a question, and that is, which one was more dangerous to Allied tank crews in World War II? A Tiger 1 with an 88mm main gun or a Panzerfaust? And we'll come back to that at the end. Now, when we think of tanks and when we think of armour, there's a huge amount of media misconceptions and myths on the subject. Whilst it's funny to laugh at Russian tanks because the turrets are blown off, well, there by the grace of God, go we. Now, this armour debate is always one which is combined with weight and design. And how can I best illustrate that? Well, this is a civilian stab vest, which I brought when I was working in quite a dangerous part of the city. It was during lockdown, during COVID. No one else was at work. I was at work, and I had to work in a very dangerous part of the city, working and finishing at silly o'clock in the morning and starting at silly o'clock at night. So my car was often the only car out in the streets, and I wore this to get in and out of work because with certain occupations you can't use your work kit. So this is a civilian alternative. Now, this is designed to be a covert stab vest. So it's designed to be worn under a hoodie, under clothing, under a big t-shirt. And it sacrifices some protection. So you've only got one soft plate in the front and one soft plate in the back. You've got no shoulder protection. Doesn't have pouch attachments or anything like that. And it's designed to be lightweight, wearable and breathable. Enough to keep you safe from a knife attack, but it won't keep you safe against higher threats. Now, every single piece of armour from this civilian stab vest, to police armour, to military armour, is designed with a energy rating, and that's a specific standard. And here we have the standards and what it will protect you against. So it will protect against certain types of knives. It will protect against certain types of stabbing implements, but it may not protect you against needles, and it will protect 9mm. It says 3.57 Magnum. I wouldn't want to push it behind 9mm. Now, what it will do is if you are shot by a 9mm, it will cushion some of the impact, but you'll still get trauma and you'll still get body impact. And that's exactly the same with tanks. Okay, this is designed to a certain standard by the manufacturer. It has to be tested, batch tested, and it will protect against some threats, but you may have injuries. And that's exactly the same with tanks. A tank is designed to a weight limit. It's designed to a purpose. It's designed to meet the threat of the day or the threat of the environment. You can't build a tank which is 10,000 tons and expect it to move. Now, tanks and armour and armoured vehicles evolve over time, and they evolve to meet the threats. So if we start off with looking at what some of the threats are, and then we'll look at how armour has evolved. So first of all, and this comes back to which one was more dangerous. If we look at what is going to penetrate armour, well, if we go back to the very basics from when tanks were first developed and armoured vehicles were first developed, really the earliest types were kinetic energy projectiles using force to push a steel object through the metal to kill the people inside. Let's not beat around the bush. Since people in cave times decided to kill each other, war has got more and more dangerous, but the purpose is to kill and maim. It's not nice. Now, in the modern age, we have sabos, we have depleted uranium rounds, we have tungsten rounds designed to push through armour using velocity, or kinetic energy, I should say. Then we have heat or chemical rounds. These detonate a charge, normally a shaped charge, designed to produce a molten jet and push through armour. This is a very basic explanation. Then we have explosively formed penetrators, as well as a slug. The explosion happens, compresses the, if you like, the weapon bit, makes a slug. The slug goes through and penetrates the armour. And in the post-war years, after World War II, we of course have the nuclear threat, which basically destroys everything. So types of armour to protect against this, we've got solid metal, we've got sloped metal or angled plate, we've got spaced armour where you've got a solid front with a protection layer, either to detonate a warhead coming in or to give you some space between the warhead coming in and increase your protection level. From the 1980s, we have ceramic armour, that's Chobham, Dorchester, that kind of stuff. The Russians did do something similar, composite armour, it's slightly different, and the Germans have got more composite, but I won't go into the details. We'll just say that ceramic composite is a type of armour. You've got special shapes like V-shaped hulls designed to deflect the blast. And you've got explosive armour, such as explosive reactive armour, Contact 1, Israeli blazer armour, that kind of stuff. Now, all of these are designed to defeat different threats. So solid armour and angled or sloped armour may work better against kinetic energy projectiles. Spaced armour and ceramic might work well against heat. Ceramic will work well against kinetic energy. Ceramic will work well against explosively formed protectors to a point. Explosive reactive armour will work well against heat. And, well, if it's a nuclear bomb, good luck. So, all of the vehicles have design limitations, and they all have a certain weight that they need to go within to be mobile for the engines to cope. And at the start of the post-war period, you have really the M48, which is along with the Centurion, one of the best designed medium tanks out there. This is a die-cast model which has been nicely painted by someone and nicely weathered. It looks lovely. And this has got a cast turret, good shape, and a cast hull, again, good shape. And now that is designed to resist really other tank projectiles, kinetic energy projectiles. It works with a certain resistance against heat, but what happens is in this period, you start to have the development of Saga missiles, Vigilant missiles, larger heat warheads, swing-fire missiles. Now, an evolution of this goes straight to the M60 series, so M48, M60. Again, you've got cast armour, ballistic profiles, designed to deal with a range of threats, but still vulnerable to heat rounds. The Germans, on the other hand, and the French go, well, do you know what? We're going to die anyway. Let's just make our tank mobile and make the Leopard 1, which has no armour. The British go, do you know what? We don't want to die. Let's heavily armour our chieftains. And you get the chieftain tank, which has better armour than the M60 and the M48. It does have some weaknesses like the side. And this armour is designed to be an all-round piece of armour. Everything then evolves because warheads, particularly the heat warheads, start to get more advanced, more dangerous. With the 84 Spigot from Russia with the Milan, these tanks are starting to get penetrated. RPG-7s move on. They move on to tandem charged warheads like the RPG-29. The tanks, the velocity from the main guns increases, the amount of kinetic energy they can project increases. And then in the early 1980s, you're looking at ceramic or composite armour as represented by this M1A1 of the Aussies. Design then evolves. So whereas the M48 and M60 store their ammunition in vulnerable places, the Leopard 1 stores it everywhere, so if it's hit it will just explode. Chieftain a little bit better with wet stowage, but then you've got the development of the bustle. So the ammunition is in the bustle, so if your tank gets hit, you've got time for the crew to get out. It may blow up eventually, but you've got time to escape. Now the main threats are basically increasing kinetic energy, better sabos, better tungsten, depleted uranium if you really want to kill your enemy, and bigger and better heat warheads. And this leads us on into the late 80s, 1990s. Now you've got tanks like the M1A1, which are well designed for protection, but the protection is geared to the front. It's geared to this frontal area here and maybe this angle here on the turret side. The rear of the tank is still extremely vulnerable to heat warheads, mobility kills, hopefully the crew get out, but if you hit anything in the wrong place or with a big enough warhead, it will blow up. There's still a lot of old tanks in service within this period, so you have modifications like the Chieftain Steel Brew, introducing a layer of extra armour to give an old, now obsolete tank some better protection. Fast forward to 2003 to the Second Gulf War, and you've got this Challenger 2. Now the threat has again increased, and some of the threats that they're having to worry about are better and better heat warheads. Now the Challenger 2 is well armoured for tank combat, but its sides are still weak and its rear is still weak. So when these were deployed to Iraq in 2003, they had explosive reactive armour at the front, then the tank's Dorchester armour. They have applique ceramic composite armour, if you like, on the sides to give them more protection from RPGs, and these stood up quite well. Unfortunately, the enemy's systems then develop further and further. So every step that you make in protecting your tank, the enemy come up with a better way of killing it. And when you enter urban environments, such as this M1A1 SEP V2 Tusk 2 from the Americans in Iraq 2008, the threat that they are facing has evolved. So the already well protected Abrams is no longer capable of withstanding the threats, and they're being destroyed, blown up, crews are being killed or maimed. The same thing is happening on the Challenger 2. So we come up with the TES, which is even more armoured than this Challenger 2, but the weight goes up. Now, what is causing this change? Well, firstly, you've got tandem charge heat warheads, you've got missiles like the Cornet, and you've got more wearing explosively formed projectiles, IEDs. And these are penetrating the side skirts and the vulnerable areas of the tank and killing the crew and blowing them up. So this M1A2 even, this is a main kit, has got the Tusk 1 protection underneath, and then the Tusk 2 panels, which are these ceramic panels over the additional Tusk 1 armour. You've got the crew stations being protected against snipers. The armour runs around more of the vehicle. Yes, you can still get mobility kills from the rear, but the crew will be kept safe. And underneath, and this is a big difference as tanks evolve and develop, is you start to have the issuing of belly plates. So this one has a belly plate here, and here we go, no belly plate. And that's because the IEDs and the landmines that these tanks are facing has gone up in power and gone up in severity. You can see this best on the Merkava 4. Now this is my ultimate Merkava 4 what if. This is a Merkava 4 from Hobby Boss, model trans turret, my custom anti-pooping drone cage, things to deflect FPV drones, extra armour here and here, and the idea of this is that this will cope with drone warfare. I've got Tusk 1 armour on the side, and like all Merkava 4s with the urban combat kit, you've got the belly plate underneath. Now there comes to a limit because you're then pushing in huge weights. So your weight is going up from 50 tons, 55 tons, 60 tons, 70 ton bridging classification, and then you're pushing sort of 73, 75 tons. In the case of the Challenger 2 TES, 75 tons. Now that poses its own logistic strain and its own bridging problems. Tankers like to be protected, and armies like to protect their tankers because they are valuable resources. They're trained soldiers. Now you say, well, the Russian tanks, they're blowing up and blowing their turrets up. Go back to the pictures of the 1973 Yom Kippur War and tell me what the M48 tanks and the M60 tanks of the Israelis looked like after they had met sagas or RPGs. You will find they're missing turrets, they're completely wrecked, they're exploded. Now you won't find pictures of Leopard 1s being destroyed because Leopard 1s, remarkably, never really saw service in a peer-to-peer conflict. And that was probably very fortunate for their crews because in the guise of the Leopard 1A2, you've got no armour. Chieftains did see service in the Iran-Iraq war, and when people laugh and say, the Russian tanks are blowing up, yeah, go have a look at the destroyed Chieftains. Tell me what condition they are in. Any tank meeting a weapon system which overmatches it will be destroyed. The designers seek to mitigate this by the use of armour, by the placement of the ammunition in a Merkava at the rear, by composite materials, spacing, by ceramic plates, reactive armour, position of the ammunition, fire suppression systems, blast resistant seats, spall liners, clever design, impact reducing, energy dissipating structures. And that is what makes the difference between the older derivatives of tanks and the newer derivatives of tanks, is that actually a lot more thought is placed into the armour protection, the dissipation of energy, and remedial actions to protect the crew. The Russians in Chechnya, where they're facing a less peer-to-peer threat than they are in Ukraine, there are pictures of Russian tanks that have taken multiple RPG hits and have not detonated. The difference is the anti-armour game is always evolving. You develop ceramic armour, the enemy develops EFPs. You develop space armour, the enemy develops tandem charged heat warheads. And latterly, what the designers of anti-tank weapons have been trying to do is to focus on the tank's weak spots. So the M1A1 and M1A2 are well protected from the front, from the side, for IEDs, for landmines, okay? They're not well protected for pooping drones, which is designed to drop bombs, to poop them onto the tank, to disable the tank by hitting the engine, by hitting a track. Disabled tank can't move, and then you can bring in more and more advanced weaponry. And they're not well protected for FPV drones, which come in like the Lancet, or Spike missiles from Israel, which come in, or Javelin missiles, which come in from on top and hit the weak points of the tank. That's where the cope cages are designed to stop anti-pooping drones. Active protection systems are designed to stop RPGs and such like. And with the latest setups, which the Russians are actually leading in, they're designed to make the FPV operator have to think about where they attack. They can't get good hits on the rear to disable them, mobility rise, and they have to come in against a stronger front armour. So, it's an evolving game. It's an ever-evolving game. Now, armies and nations like South Africa, where they don't have the budget to spend millions and billions on the armour, they are developing modular kits like this Elephant Mark II to improve their old tanks to give them some combat resistance. And again, this is subject to environment. If you were to take the Elephant Mark II and take it to Iraq in 2008, it would get blown up because its armour is insufficient to cope with the threat level. Same thing as if you were to take an M1 Abrams and to take it into Lebanon in 2006, it would get blown up because even the Merkavas were getting hit there. The crews weren't always dying. Some of them sadly were. Many of them were surviving to fight and live another day. If you were to take a Challenger 2 in its 2003 format and take that to Ukraine, well, against the Lancet drone, against the top attack weapons, the vulnerabilities are being exposed. Some countries are better than others with dealing with top attack threats, such as Sweden, where the STRV-122B, their version of the Leopard, actually has more top armour protection than the Leopard 2A7V of the German army. But it's a constantly evolving catch-up game. Now, my personal opinion is I'm very concerned about the fact that even the Tusk kits are being supplied to Ukraine. It's not because I don't think that Ukrainians deserve the best armour. They do. However, once the genie is out the bottle, the enemy will catch up. So when you are exporting top tier NATO armour, such as the Tusk setup and ceramic panels, and they're falling into enemies' hands, particularly secret makeups such as the Dorchester 2, what then happens is the enemy has that information to enhance their anti-tank weapons. And the danger of that is, whilst they might be fighting Russia in Ukraine, the information will come back to Iran, the information will come back to Hezbollah, the information will come back to Hamas, and what you then find is that your best armour protection is then undone by the enemy's next advance. So whilst I do think it's right that Ukrainians get good equipment, I do personally have reservations in how much exportability of the armour is being made. And that's because these panels here, the exact makeup of the panels here, the exact nature of the Chobham and Dorchester armour, the exact toughness and grade of the steel, once that is known to the enemy, they can then make the weapons to combat it. I'll just finish this video off by saying that it is very difficult to protect your vehicles all the time from every threat. Museums and the media get this constantly wrong. A tank is designed to a certain weight limit, to a design specification. The designers know what will overmatch the armour, and they either go the German and French route and give it no armour, or they try their best within their available technology and means to protect the tank. And that leads me back to the question here, which one was the more dangerous? Well, actually, any Allied tank hit by the Tiger 1 or Tiger 2, King Tiger, Jag Tiger, Jagged Panzer, Jagged Panther, will be blown to bits. The difference is there are very few of these on the battlefield. They were large, they couldn't cross bridges, they got stuck, they broke down, they were targeted and hit by Allied air power. I would argue, looking at the statistics and looking at tank accounts, the accounts of tank crews, that the weapon to be most feared, particularly in Normandy, particularly in the Battle of Berlin, was the Panzerfaust. There were many of these. The impact holes were tiny, the damage inside the tank and the spool was immense. There's always a battle between protection and armour, and you can only do your best within your limitations, and that's why this game is constantly evolving. The big vulnerability to me from NATO armour now is to top attack weapons and pooping drones. I don't know what the tank of the future will look like. I don't know what the armoured vehicle of the future will look like. But I hope this helps understand armour in a simple way. Take care. Goodbye.